I've always believed that when a relationship dies, it doesn't go all at once. It unravels in silence, thread by thread, until one day, you realize the person sitting across from you at dinner is a stranger. That day came for me in early December. I wish I could say it was dramatic, something worthy of a movie. It wasn't. It started with a whisper of discomfort, a glance that lingered too long on nothing, a laugh that didn't sound quite like hers. And I kept telling myself I was imagining things. That work had me stressed, that maybe we were just tired. That winter did this to people, made them cold, distant. But it wasn't winter. It was Claire. We'd been married 6 years. Long enough to settle into the kind of rhythm people mistake for peace. I was still in love with her, or at least the version of her I thought was still real. But I can't pinpoint the exact moment when she started slipping away. I only know when I couldn't explain it away anymore. The first real red flag? She stopped reacting to my touch. It wasn't dramatic at first. No flinching, no pulling away, just stillness. A kind of blank response whenever I'd reach for her hand or brush her hair behind her ear. At night, we used to fall asleep back to back, but still touching, her foot over mine, my hand on her hip. Now, she'd inch further away until we were separated by a foot of space and a canyon of silence. The second thing I noticed was the phone. Claire was never secretive. She used to leave her phone anywhere, kitchen counter, nightstand, even the bathroom. She'd ask me to read her texts aloud while she drove. If someone messaged her, she'd casually answer, sometimes with me looking over her shoulder. But that changed. Suddenly, her phone was always face down, always within reach, never out of sight. When it buzzed, she'd glance at it, swipe it off, and then quickly change the subject. I tried not to let it get to me. I'm not the jealous type, at least I wasn't. But it's amazing how fast your brain starts connecting dots that aren't even supposed to exist. Then came the change in her routine. Claire has been working at a law firm downtown since before we were married. She's the kind of person who thrives on consistency, same route, same coffee shop, same parking structure. For 6 years, I could set a clock by her daily rhythm. So when she started leaving earlier in the morning, without grabbing her usual coffee or giving me a goodbye kiss, it registered. I didn't say anything at first, just watched. Then I noticed she stopped parking in the garage near her office. I only found out because she left a receipt in her coat pocket for a valet service in another part of the city, near the arts district, not her firm. I asked about it casually. She blinked, then shrugged. "Oh, they've been doing construction by the usual spot," she said. Total nightmare. But I drove by her usual garage the next day. It was wide open. No cones. No signs. No construction. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe she had a client out that way. Maybe it was temporary. But I could feel the quiet weight of something building. One night I tried to talk to her. We were sitting at dinner, roast chicken I'd made, mashed potatoes she barely touched. She was scrolling her phone with her other hand, and I finally said, "Hey, can we talk?" She didn't even look up. "Sure. What's up?" I hesitated. I felt like a teenager trying to ask out his crush. Terrified of the answer, of screwing it up. I feel like, I don't know, things feel off between us lately. She set her phone down, face down again, and stared at me like I just accused her of something vile. "Off how?" she asked flatly. I looked at her, really looked, and I swear, it felt like she was daring me to say it. I didn't take the bait. "I just mean we don't really talk anymore," I said. "We're kind of floating around each other." She leaned back in her chair and folded her arms. "Is this because I've been working more? Because I leave a little earlier? Really, Andrew?" I blinked. "No, it's not about that. I'm just saying I miss you. That's all." She didn't soften. If anything, she went colder. "I can't believe you're trying to guilt me about my job. You know how hard I've worked for my promotion." "I'm not, Claire. I'm not guilting you. I'm just saying, something's changed, and I don't know what it is." She pushed her chair back. "What's changed is I'm exhausted. I'm carrying the weight of everything. This marriage, my career, the bills, everything. And you're sitting here talking about vibes like it's some high school drama. I tried to respond, but she cut me off. And then she said it. I'm leaving. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. She just said it like she was telling me the weather forecast. I sat there in stunned silence. You're what? I managed to say. I'm moving out, she said, her tone robotic. I can't keep doing this. I feel like I'm suffocating. Like I'm wasting my potential. Claire, where is this coming from? She gave me a look like I was stupid. From years of me pushing while you coast. You're content working at your little job, living paycheck to paycheck, acting like life's just something to be endured. You don't want anything more. That's not true, I said, stunned. You think ambition is a bad word. You think being emotionally available means grunting once during a conversation. You never ask me about what I want. You're comfortable being stuck. She stood, walked to the hallway, and grabbed her coat. My mouth was dry. My heart was pounding. It was like the floor had opened beneath me and I was still trying to pretend it hadn't. Claire, I said quietly, is there someone else? She turned around so fast it startled me. Wow, she said. Really? That's where you go? The minute I try to leave, you jump to cheating? That's pathetic, Andrew. You're so threatened by other people's success. You assume the only reason someone would walk away from you is because they found someone better. That's not what She held up her hand. Spare me. If you want to believe this is about some guy, fine. But it's not. It's about me finally realizing I'm tired of dragging dead weight. And just like that, she left. No suitcase. No bags. Just her coat, her purse, and her phone. Still turned screen down as she walked out the door. And I just stood there. It's hard to describe what it feels like when someone turns your entire world into a footnote in their story. 1 second you're sharing takeout and talking about what show to binge next, and the next you're staring at a cold dinner across an empty chair, wondering how long it's all been slipping away while you looked in the wrong direction. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch, staring at the wall, trying to replay the conversation in my head, looking for some thread I could tug on to unravel the truth. But deep down I already knew. This wasn't sudden. It was premeditated. Claire had already left me long before she walked out the door. She just finally said it out loud. After Claire left that night, something in me froze over. I didn't chase after her, didn't text, didn't call. I didn't even cry. Not because it didn't hurt, it did, but because the shock had calcified into something heavier than sadness. Something colder. The house was quiet in a way I'd never felt before. Not peaceful. Not lonely either. It felt like something had been cut out of it and me along with it. In the days that followed, I kept telling myself I'd seen this coming. But that was a lie. I hadn't seen it. Not clearly. What I had seen were signs, subtle at first, then less so. I just didn't want to believe them. After she left, though, the movie reel started. You know what I mean? The one your brain plays when everything finally snaps into focus. Every weird moment. Every casual deflection. Every time something felt off and I let it slide. I remembered the first time she said she had to fly to Houston for a last-minute investor meeting. Claire wasn't a traveling type. She'd always said business trips were for people who hate their own homes. But suddenly they were happening monthly. Houston, Atlanta, Denver. None of them confirmed by her firm's internal calendar. Yeah, I checked. I didn't want to be that guy, but I was already becoming him. Then there were the outfits. I don't mean to sound like a jealous teenager, but Claire's wardrobe changed almost overnight. Before, she wore mostly neutrals, tailored pants, blazers, the occasional bold red lip when we went out. But lately, there were new designer shoes in the closet, dresses with price tags still attached, jewelry I hadn't seen before and definitely hadn't bought. When I asked about one particular necklace, a gold chain with a small sapphire pendant, she smiled faintly and said it was a gift from a client. They like to impress, she added, brushing it off like it was nothing. But Claire worked in contract law. Her clients were construction firms and small startups, not Fortune 500 execs handing out luxury gifts. Still, I didn't push. I told myself she deserved nice things, that she was successful, that maybe I was the one being petty. Another thing, she started mocking my job. quietly at first, little jabs disguised as jokes. "I wish I could take off midweek just because my department's between projects," she said one evening when I came home early. Or, "I don't get how you're so comfortable just coasting. Don't you want more?" I worked in data analysis at a mid-sized firm. Nothing flashy, but I was good at it. Stable. Paid the bills, let us travel, kept a roof over our heads. I thought she respected that. She used to. But the respect turned into something else. Thinly veiled contempt. Comparison. "I had lunch with Darren again today," she said one night, twirling pasta on her fork. "He just closed a multi-million-dollar acquisition. Can you believe he's only 32? I nodded, keeping my mouth shut. Darren was a client. I'd met him once. Sharp suit, sharper grin. The kind of guy who shook your hand like it was a competition. Claire talked about him a lot. Too much. And that was the thing. She started comparing me to successful men. Sometimes directly. Sometimes just by association. I became a measuring stick against people I'd never met and never wanted to be. There were late nights, too. Investment dinners, she called them. First, I believed her. She'd text me blurry photos of half-finished wine glasses or dimly lit restaurants. Sometimes a grainy **T of a dessert with a caption like, "Working hard, grinning face with sweat." But when I asked who she was meeting, she'd pause, then offer vague names that didn't match the firms she worked with. "Just a friend of Darren's," she'd say. Or, "Someone from a fintech startup. Don't remember the name." She never remembered the name. Then there was the night she didn't come home. She'd said she had dinner with a partner in Dallas. Her tone was clipped when she told me, almost annoyed I even asked. Around midnight, I texted to check in. No reply. By 2 a.m. I called. Straight to voicemail. She came home the next day around noon. Said her phone had died and she ended up crashing at a hotel because she'd had too much wine. Didn't want to risk driving, she said, like it was noble. I didn't even argue. I wanted to believe her. That was the hardest part. How much I wanted to believe her. I wasn't naive. I just loved her. That's the part people forget. When you love someone, you don't assume they're lying. You give them the benefit of the doubt until you run out of benefit, and even then, you hang on. But after she left, I started counting the lies I'd swallowed. There was the spa charge in October from a place 2 towns over, the kind that caters to couples and sells $200 candles. When I asked about it, she blinked and said it must have been a billing error. I let it go. There was the second phone charger she kept in her purse, even though she swore she only had one phone. A small thing. But I saw her plugging it in the passenger seat once, using a different cable than usual. I asked. She said she borrowed it from a coworker. She never brought that charger inside. I remembered her sudden interest in networking events and executive mixers. She'd always hated those. But now, she'd dress up, spend hours getting ready, and come back late, smelling like someone else's cologne and roses. Then there was her laughter. That was what really hit me in hindsight. Claire used to laugh with me. Snort laughs, forehead against my shoulder, can't catch her breath laughter. But in those last few months, her laugh changed. It was quieter, controlled, like she was practicing how to laugh for someone. I remember one night we were watching a movie, some comedy we'd seen a dozen times. She barely smiled. Her phone buzzed, and I glanced over. She picked it up, smiled that smile, the one I hadn't seen directed at me in months, and started typing fast. When I asked what was funny, she waved me off. Nothing, just a meme from Taylor. Taylor's sense of humor could never make Claire laugh like that. Looking back, I think the hardest part was realizing she hadn't distanced herself overnight. It wasn't a sudden shift. It was months of slow erosion, a campaign of detachment, one step at a time. It was subtle, fewer texts during the day. No more good morning kisses. Her voice softening when she picked up a call and stepped into another room. The way she'd stop talking mid-sentence when I walked in. How she always seemed just a little too relieved when I said I had to work late. The signs weren't just there, they were everywhere. I just didn't want to see them. Or maybe I saw them all along and convinced myself not to look too closely. The truth was, Claire had been leaving long before she said the words. She just waited for me to be the last one to notice. And now that she was gone, all I had were these fragments. Scattered memories, inconsistencies, gut punches I'd shrugged off at the time. Now they stacked on top of each other like a dam about to break. And I knew, without her ever saying it, without evidence yet in my hands, that I hadn't been imagining things. There was someone else. I just hadn't found him yet. But I would. I didn't go looking for proof right away. That's the part people never believe. They assume the moment she walked out, I turned into some obsessed detective, digging through records and stalking her movements. But the truth is, for a while I just sat with the silence. I needed to understand whether I wanted the truth or just confirmation of what I already felt in my bones. The proof came to me instead. It arrived 3 weeks after she left, on a Tuesday afternoon, buried between spam emails and a calendar reminder I'd forgotten to cancel. The subject line was blank. No greeting, just an attachment and a single sentence in the body. You deserve to know. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. Somewhere along the way, I'd already crossed the line from fear into inevitability. The first attachment was a **T of a bank transfer. Claire's name was on it, clear as day. The amount wasn't small. 5 figures. Sent to a private account with a note labeled, investment partnership. The date caught my eye immediately. It was from late October. The same week she told me she had to stay overnight for meetings. I opened the second attachment. It was a photo. Not grainy. Not distant. It was taken inside a private club in Dallas. One I recognized instantly because Claire had shown me their website months earlier, talking about how exclusive it was. The lighting was low, warm. The table was set with crystal glasses and polished silverware. And there she was. Claire wasn't just sitting across from someone. She was leaning into him, her hand resting casually on his chest. Her head tilted in a way I hadn't seen in months. She was smiling. Not the practice smile she'd been giving me, but the real one. The one that used to be mine. The man beside her had his arm around her waist like it belonged there. Mark Langford. I recognized him immediately. She'd mentioned his name once, casually months back. An investor. Old connection, she'd said. Someone she'd met long before we ever started having problems. Apparently, long before she decided to leave. I zoomed in on the timestamp embedded in the image. Same night. Same hours she'd claimed to be at a financial dinner. Same city. Same table. Everything aligned too perfectly to deny. This wasn't a drunken mistake. It wasn't loneliness or a moment of weakness. This was scheduled, funded, maintained. She had built an entire parallel life and labeled it ambition. I sat back and stared at the screen, waiting for the emotional collapse everyone talks about. The rage, the tears, the screaming into pillows. None of it came. What I felt instead was clarity. Every lie suddenly made sense. The missing names, the changed routes, the contempt. The way she talked about successful men like they were an entirely different species, one I could never be part of. She wasn't just leaving me. She was upgrading. Or at least she thought she was. I didn't reply to the email. I didn't ask who sent it. I didn't need to. The truth had arrived fully formed. Clean. Undeniable. That night, I opened a notebook I hadn't touched in over a year. I wrote down dates, locations, conversations, times she'd left early, nights she hadn't come home. Every detail I could remember, now viewed through a lens that finally made sense. The timeline was brutal. She hadn't cheated after she emotionally checked out. She checked out because she was already cheating. The criticism, the comparisons, the sudden disgust, they weren't reactions. They were justifications. She needed me to be smaller so she could feel larger walking away. I realized something else, too. She never planned to be caught. If I hadn't asked questions, if I hadn't noticed the small fractures, she would have rewritten the story entirely. I would have been the unambitious husband she bravely escaped. The man too insecure to keep up. The obstacle, not the victim. The photo stayed open on my laptop long after midnight. Not because I couldn't look away, but because I wanted to remember it clearly. Not for revenge. Not even for closure. For accuracy. This was the moment where illusion ended. By the time the sun came up, I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was resolved. Claire had made her choice months ago. She just delivered the receipt late. And now that I had proof, not suspicion, not doubt, but evidence, I understood something that changed everything. I didn't need to confront her. I didn't need explanations. I didn't need apologies that would never be honest anyway. What I needed was distance, finality, control. And unlike her, I didn't need to announce my next move. I already knew what I was going to do. The morning after I saw the photo of Claire with Mark Langford, I made a cup of coffee, sat at the kitchen counter, and started my exit. Not a dramatic one. No shouting matches, no thrown suitcases, no handwritten letters taped to mirrors. I wanted silence, precision. She had built her betrayal with intention, piece by piece. I figured the least I could do was leave with the same careful resolve. She hadn't destroyed me. She'd freed me. But that didn't mean I was going to disappear without making it count. First, I made a list, an actual list. Not emotional rambling, but a logistical breakdown of everything I needed to do before I left. My clothes, tools, electronics, bank accounts, business documents, anything that could tie me to this house, to her, or to the version of myself I used to be. I started deleting myself in stages. Emails first. I cleared the inbox we used to share for household bills, switching them to a separate account she didn't know about. Then I moved my digital files off the main computer, wiped the drives, and returned the machine to its default state. Not maliciously, just cleanly. No fingerprints. Next was the house. I knew every square inch of it. Every drawer that squeaked, every lock that stuck, every wall we'd painted together back when things still felt honest. I walked from room to room like a ghost, pulling my presence out of each one. I took nothing sentimental. No wedding photos. No souvenirs. Not even the guitar she bought me on our 3rd anniversary. The one I'd always dreamed of owning. I didn't want objects. I wanted separation. My side of the closet was empty in under an hour. I folded my things neatly, packed them in labeled bags, and stored them in a rented unit 2 towns over. The key went in my wallet. No forwarding address. No trail. By noon, I had contacted my lawyer. We'd had an initial conversation weeks earlier, back when Claire first started acting like I was just a roommate she hadn't kicked out yet. At the time, I hadn't even admitted what I was afraid of. But I'd asked enough questions to get the ball rolling. Now I called and said, simply, "It's time." He didn't ask for details. He already knew the tone. We filed paperwork that afternoon, clean, strategic, and dated well before Claire's expected move-out. Everything was by the book. No anger, just distance. We drafted an asset division agreement and notarized it that same week. I even signed the deed relinquishment for the house. That was the part that felt the most surreal. Giving her the house. I'd loved this place. Put in the backyard patio with my own hands. Refinished the floors. Rewired the basement lighting. But it wasn't mine anymore. It was a stage for a marriage that no longer existed. So I signed it over. Completely. Quietly. And with purpose. I left the documents on the kitchen counter in a folder with her name on the front. Dated. Signed. Sealed. Then I made the last move of all. I disconnected my phone. Not turned it off. Disconnected. I ported the number to a new line under a different provider and wiped the old one clean. I didn't want texts. No last-ditch calls. No fake remorse. If she wanted to reach me, she'd have to talk to my attorney. That was my line in the sand. Then I left. Not in the middle of the night. Not even in a rush. I left in the daylight, calm and focused. Packed my car with what little I needed. Gave the neighbors a casual wave, and drove away like I was running an errand. By the time Claire came back to the house to gather her things, I was already gone. Not hiding. Just done. And she knew it the moment she walked in. There were no clothes in the closet. No shoes at the door. No keys on the hook. No bills with my name. No email pings. No shadow of me in the corners. I hadn't stormed out. I hadn't yelled. I had just erased myself from the life she no longer wanted me in. But the part that I know really hit her, the part that made her pause, was how clean it all was. There was nothing to chase, nothing to question, just the folder on the kitchen counter, waiting like a final note from someone who didn't need closure anymore. The documents were dated back to October, a full month before she said she was leaving. I hadn't left in panic. I had simply waited for her to say the words out loud, "I'm leaving," so I could finally seal the door behind her and walk through a better one of my own. By January, the air had changed. Not just outside, though winter was sharp that year, but in me. There was a stillness, a strange calm I hadn't known in years. I'd moved into a small apartment on the edge of Portland, about 20 minutes from the chaos I'd left behind. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't permanent. But it was mine. Quiet, bare, honest. I had expected to feel broken by that point. Maybe bitter, maybe numb. But instead, I found myself waking up each morning with clarity. The kind of clarity that only comes after the storm has passed and you realize you're still standing, still breathing. Claire hadn't tried to reach out. Not directly. There were a few missed calls to my lawyer's office, and apparently one voicemail where she expressed confusion about the asset transfer. But nothing else. I think she still believed I'd come back eventually, or at least that I'd leave a door cracked open behind me. But the truth was, I'd already built a new one. It started back in the fall, in secret, long before she said the words, "I'm leaving." While Claire was out building a new version of herself with Mark Langford and expensive steakhouse dinners, I'd been quietly constructing something of my own. Something real. I had poured nearly a year of late nights and caffeine-fueled weekends into developing a small software platform, a smart integration tool for mid-sized logistics companies, something I knew from my background in data analysis. I called it Relay North. What started as a pet project turned into something bigger after a mentor of mine introduced me to an early-stage venture group in Portland. They liked the demo, liked me even more, and helped set up my first investor pitch. I walked in wearing the same blazer I'd worn to Claire's cousin's wedding, with sweaty palms and zero expectations. And I walked out with seed funding. I formed an LLC within weeks, partnered with a friend from college who handled the front-end development, and spent the next 6 months doing everything Claire once accused me of lacking. Taking risks, thinking bigger, moving fast. The part that stung in a poetic kind of way was that she never noticed, even as I stayed up until 2 a.m. working behind a locked office door, even when I missed 3 of her work functions in a row, even as I stopped talking about my job entirely because I wanted the satisfaction of building something without needing her approval or validation. She said I had no ambition, that I lacked emotional depth. She had no idea I'd spent the past year proving her wrong. Quietly, deliberately, and legally. And on a cold Monday in January, that truth walked into the courtroom and sat across from her. It was a preliminary hearing, just procedural. Claire wore a sharp gray coat over a black turtleneck, her hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless. She looked like someone arriving to negotiate, not someone facing consequences. When our eyes met across the room, she gave me a look, almost a smirk, like this was all just formality, a minor delay in her version of moving on. She had no idea what was coming. When my attorney stood and began speaking, he wasn't theatrical. No accusations, no shouting, just a methodical presentation of facts, dates, documents, declarations. He produced the formation paperwork for Relay North, the funding documentation, the trust we'd set up to protect postmarital business assets, and most importantly, the valuation. As of that hearing, Relay North was valued at just over $12 per million. Claire's face didn't change at first. She tilted her head slightly, like she hadn't quite understood what she'd heard. Then came the slow shift, eyebrows drawing together, lips parting ever so slightly, and finally, her hands tightening around the strap of her bag in her lap. The valuation had been reviewed by a third-party analyst. Verified, clean, public, and thanks to Oregon's marital property laws, Claire wasn't entitled to any of it. Not the trust, not the corporate assets, not the future equity. It had all been structured after our official date of separation, and my attorney had the receipts. Bank logs, time-stamped filings, all within the confines of the law. All fully disclosed. Nothing hidden, just protected. Claire looked at me then. Not with anger, not even with regret. With disbelief. Like she was seeing someone she didn't recognize. And maybe she was. She had spent months convincing herself I was the man she outgrew. That I was too small, too slow, too comfortable. But the truth was, while she was chasing the illusion of the rich life, with someone who flaunted money over character, I was building something real, something that didn't need to be shown off to be legitimate. Her attorney asked for a recess. It was granted. I sat in the hallway during the break, sipping coffee from a vending machine, while she paced 3 benches down, whispering frantically into her phone. I didn't need to hear the words. I already knew what the call was about. Mark Langford wasn't going to bail her out. He'd made his play. Claire was supposed to walk away with half a house and maybe a piece of whatever I eventually built. But now, she had the house and not much else. A roof, some furniture, and a whole lot of questions she didn't know how to answer. When we returned to the courtroom, things were quieter, colder. Her lawyer looked stiff, like he'd just realized he was playing the wrong hand. I didn't speak for the rest of the hearing. Didn't need to. The documents did it for me. Afterward, as I walked out, Claire followed. "Andrew," she said, her voice sharp and low. "Can we talk?" I turned to her slowly. "About what?" Her eyes flicked toward the parking lot. "This isn't what I expected." "No," I said. "I imagine it's not. You made all of that behind my back?" "No," I said again, evenly. "I made it beside you. You just weren't looking." She didn't respond right away. I could see it, the mental rewiring. Trying to reconcile the man she left with the man standing in front of her now. She'd spent so long believing her version of me was the truth. It never occurred to her I might have grown while she was busy disappearing. "You could have told me," she said finally. "And you could have stayed," I replied. We stood there in silence. Then I added, "But let's be honest. If I had told you, would it have changed anything? Or would it just have made it harder to leave?" She didn't answer. Didn't need to. I walked away without looking back. Claire got the house. At first, I think she saw it as some kind of victory, something she won in the fallout. But within a week, the cracks started to show. Literally. A roof leak revealed mold from an old flood we never fully addressed. The heating system failed a safety inspection, carbon monoxide risk flagged. The warranties, all expired. The mortgage, refinanced in her name last fall, signed and sealed while she was busy calling me emotionally distant. She called my lawyer in a panic. "He left me with a broken house," she claimed. But the truth was simpler. I didn't sabotage anything. I just stopped shielding her from the reality she ignored. I handed it all over cleanly, legally, and with full responsibility. She wanted independence. She got it. And with it came every hidden consequence she once thought I'd always be there to fix. I saw her again months later at a North Ridge Ventures charity gala. She didn't see me at first. I was standing near the back, quiet, calm, with someone new at my side. A woman who didn't flaunt status, who didn't wear ambition like a P*N. She laughed easily, listened fully. We didn't need to perform. When Claire finally noticed me, her expression shifted. It wasn't shock. It wasn't even regret. It was realization. She understood that I hadn't just recovered. I had risen. Without rage. Without revenge. Just forward motion. She looked around like she didn't belong there anymore. And maybe she didn't. In December, she made a choice. She thought she was walking into a better life. But in January, she learned she was just walking out of mine. And now the doors had closed. Quietly. Fully. And for good.